been a minute, you guys. It really has been. Alright, I've been sick of this gate here, so there we go. It's been a little while since I've made a YouTube video, you guys, and that's mainly because I've been having some difficulties with figuring out a good mic setup for this Harley. One of the things about the Grom was that it was such a quiet bike, it didn't really have any noise to compete with. So my microphone now really only picks up the Harley, and I had to figure out a way around that, and that took me a while to figure out, but hopefully I figured it out, you guys, and I hope the wind noise isn't too bad with today's video. But today's topic I wanted to go over is buying a motorcycle when your parents don't like them. So I can relate to this topic, you guys, because my parents didn't want me to have a motorcycle at all, and I got one while I was still living at home with my parents. So I kind of wanted to give you guys 3 tips on how you might be able to get a motorcycle while you're still living with your parents. So I'll tell you a little story time about how I got my first motorcycle. And it's actually a pretty funny story, pretty crazy, but this is all back when I lived in Illinois. I found a Ninja 300 that I liked online, and I didn't really know too much about bikes, but I knew I didn't want to go for a 600 based on the YouTube videos that I was watching, and that was good advice. But I bought a Ninja 300 off Craigslist. The guy who lived in Chicago. I lived in a suburb of Chicago. I lived about 40-50 minutes outside of where this guy lived, and I had him drive it to me. I actually had him drive it to my friend's house because my parents couldn't find out. The bike was like a 2013 Ninja with like 3,000 miles on it, so it was pretty mint, never dropped or anything. So he pulled up with it. I bought it sight unseen, and I had my first motorcycle. And now the real challenge was where I was going to store it. So the good news is my buddy got a dual sport maybe a little bit before or a little bit after I bought my bike. Actually, I think it was like a week before I bought my motorcycle. He got a dual sport, and that was his first bike as well. So it kind of gave me the bug to buy a motorcycle for sure, because I've always wanted one, but then when my best friend got one, I had to get one too, so we can cruise around together. And I'll show you guys the photo of that. It's pretty sick. But I ended up leaving it at my friend's house for like 2 weeks, and this whole time I'm kind of thinking about how I'm going to break it to my parents. I ended up renting a storage unit, but I never took the bike to the storage unit because I was too afraid to drive it to the storage unit, because it was about a 15-minute drive, and again, I've never ridden a motorcycle before. I actually, once I bought the motorcycle, I actually hopped on it for the first time, and I just kind of took off with it. I have really good balance, and I do drive a manual car, and I have been for many years, so I kind of knew the how do you call it? I knew the mechanics around the motorcycle and how it worked. My biggest fear was kind of like handling the motorcycle and making sure I wasn't going to drop it. But long story short, I ended up not using the storage unit, so I paid for a month and never even took the bike there. And then I just decided one day I'm going to bring it home. So I rode that thing home and parked it in my garage. The first one to see it was my dad, because I told him, I was like, hey Dad, there's something in the garage, I just want you to get me something from the garage, or something like that. And so he goes to see in the garage, and then he doesn't really give me a reaction, but he calls my mom over. And then this is when I knew I was down shit creek here, because my mom is very anti-motorcycle. So basically she just starts yelling at me and, you know, saying I'm disrespectful for going against their word and all this stuff, and it ended up being a big thing, and I didn't ride my motorcycle for like 2 weeks because she took the lock off my Springfield XD, like the barrel lock that you put through like the barrel and the magazine well to prevent the gun from firing. Yeah, she put that around the rear disc of my motorcycle. So, you know, I was 18 years old, or actually I was older than that at the time. I think I was like 19 or 20 at that time. when I brought that bike home. But anybody who's Spanish, you guys can comment down below. You guys know that 18 doesn't mean anything if you're from a Spanish family. So I kind of wanted to give you guys some tips. Obviously, you can see I'm riding a bike today. And eventually I was able to ride the bike at home while I was still living with my parents. But there were a few things that I kind of had in line before I brought the bike to my parents' house. One of them being, I kind of knew my parents. There's been a few things that I pushed with them at the time that were kind of going out of their comfort zone. And the first thing that I went out of their comfort zone was when I brought a pistol home. When I turned 21, I've always wanted a gun, and I brought my first pistol home. And I have a brother at home too, so I had to make sure, I kept it safe from him and secured the firearm properly and stuff like that. But they didn't want guns in the home. I went and bought a gun anyway. And then that was probably a few months prior to buying the Ninja. And then the second thing was I started sleeping over my girlfriend's house, which they didn't want me to because they were very against it. They're strict parents. And again, at this point, I'm 21, 22. She had her own apartment, and I would kind of sleep over there, or I've been wanting to sleep over there for a while, and we've been dating at least probably about 7 months at this point. So I didn't ask to stay with her. I didn't ask my parents to stay at her house when it was only like a month in. At this point, they've already known her, they met her, and things like that, but they're still against me staying over. But I would basically go over all the time to visit. And I think I slept over without their permission. I can't remember if I did or not, but anyways, I eased them into that one. But this one was the thing that I knew that I would have the hardest time winning them over on. And I still got it done anyway. So the main piece is, you guys, you gotta know your parents. That's tip number one. You gotta know your parents, and you gotta know what you can push them on. But before you really try to push this on your parents who are anti-motorcycle, you really gotta look at yourself first. And that brings me to my second point. You really have to have all your ducks in a row before you try and go and press a motorcycle on your parents. I unfortunately wasn't the best student in school, so I didn't have that going for me. But I did have a really good job at the time, and I still do have a good job, but I had a good job at the time for my age, and I was making good money, and I had a lot of money saved. So me buying a motorcycle didn't really make a dent in my financials, because I was so disciplined in saving my money. So if you're going to spend all your money on a motorcycle, it's probably not the smartest choice, and your parents are probably going to make you get rid of it. The more responsible you are outside of owning a motorcycle and driving it on the road, the more likely you are to be successful with your parents allowing you to have a motorcycle. So if you're in school right now, you got to make sure you got your grades are good. You got to make sure that if you're on a team that you're showing up to everything on time. If you have a job, that you're doing good at your job and you're not calling them late all the time, and all these kind of things. Your parents are going to look at that when they decide if they're going to let you have a motorcycle. Because if you've been slacking off in all the areas of life, then they're probably not going to let you slide with a motorcycle, and they're going to make you get rid of it, just like the guy I bought the Grom from. His parents made him get rid of that bike, and I got it from him for a good deal because he had to get rid of it. And I'm sure he lost some money on that. And the third piece is, you got to be willing to move out if that's what it takes, because some parents are so strict that they'll make you move out. So if you feel like you're going to come home and lay this down on your parents that, hey, mom and dad, I got a motorcycle and I'm going to ride it, you better be sure that you're in a spot that you can move out if you want to keep the bike. And if you're not going to keep the bike, your mom's probably going to want you to sell that thing next day, or your dad's going to want to make you sell that thing next day, and you're going to take a loss on it, or they're going to make you move out. which is the case on what happened with the ground I bought. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys some tips and give you my story on what happened. I came from strict parents. I know how that works. I can say that my parents are always supportive of me. I mean, even to this day, they don't want me on a motorcycle, but you got to have the discussion with them that, hey, you know, I'm a man. I'm a grown man. I'm doing my own thing. You know, I live in another state now. I got all my finances in check. If I want to ride a motorcycle around, that's my prerogative. You know, your parents are probably not letting you ride a motorcycle because they care so much about you, and that's a great thing. There's a lot of parents out there nowadays that really don't give a crap. So make sure that you respect your parents, but you got to also draw that line where they got to respect you and respect your interests. But you have to be at a point in your life where you've earned it. You can't ask for respect if you haven't earned it, especially when you're living at home. That's why you got to have everything, all your ducks in a row, your money in a row. You got to have your job in a row. You got to have your grades in a row if you're in school. Otherwise, it's just not going to work out. And trust me, guys, it's worth it. Motorcycle riding is super fun. Like I said earlier, I always had an interest in them, but now that I've ridden them, I don't think I could really see myself without a motorcycle. I'm not the one that rides every day. I just kind of am a weekend rider. But these things are so fun, and they go really fast. Depends on what you get though. Like this 1200 Harley, it's got a lot of torque, so it picks up real fast, but it's not exactly, you know, like a 1000cc bike killer or anything. But motorcycles are definitely worth having. They can bring a lot to your life. Like Psycho Cruiser says, they can cure your depression. It's just kind of good. If you're in a bad mood, I just kind of go out for a motorcycle ride. I used to be a big car guy, and I still am, but cars are so much more expensive than motorcycles. I mean, it could depend on what kind of motorcycle you buy, but for the most part, nice cars are a lot more expensive than nice motorcycles. So motorcycling is a great hobby to get into, and if you can find yourself some friends that have motorcycles as well, even better. The best thing ever used to be when me and my buddy used to ride around. It's just so much fun, man. And there's nothing like being out here in the breeze, especially in Florida. You got nice weather year-round. It's just something to look forward to. So if you're not in that spot yet where you don't got your money right, you don't got your grades right, and you're interested in getting a motorcycle while you're living at home, I'd say it's worth it, man. At least have the discussion with your parents. Say, hey, you know, I realize that I'm not doing everything my best right now, but this is what will motivate me to do that. If I get myself, you know, if I get B's and if I save some money, can I get a motorcycle if I do those things, you know? And just have that discussion. It's really a fine line of a discussion with your parents. But in my case, I tried to have a discussion, and they weren't with it. There was no way that I could convince them. Even my mom said it, because I had to bring it up. Like, I used to bring it up like twice a day, man. Talking about motorcycles. My dad was a little bit more lenient towards them because he had a motorcycle before. But my mom was so against it, and she straight up said, "You're not gonna get a motorcycle. I'm not gonna discuss it with you." And that's when I had to boss up and say, okay, you know what? She ain't gonna let me get a motorcycle with her permission. I just got to go do it for myself. So I did, and it took a little bit of letting it sink in that I had a motorcycle and that I was gonna ride it before she let me do it. So if you have any questions, you guys, I appreciate all the comments that I got in my last video. I love interacting with you guys. Makes my day, and it motivates me to make more videos. So please comment below. If you're going through that situation, maybe I can give you some advice. But thank you so much for watching my YouTube videos. It really does mean a lot to me. Please subscribe. I'm going to make some stuff on some other content here pretty soon that hopefully you guys can relate to. And wherever you're at, man, just enjoy your day. Take care.